The small stage at the community music fundraiser in New Hampshire vibrated under the glow of warm golden lights, blending with the soft rock blaring from the speakers. The local crowd, kids, parents, and seniors, gathered in the outdoor area, holding soda cups and signs in support of arts education for children. Behind the stage, a large banner shimmered in the sunlight, boldly reading, "Music for the Future." 17-year-old Jake, a proud libertarian, stepped onto the stage with an electric guitar slung across his shoulder like a warrior preparing for battle. His friends in the audience erupted into cheers. "Go, Jake!" Without hesitation, he plugged into the amp, flipped the switch, and launched into his performance. His fingers ignited from the very first note, unleashing a lightning-fast tapping sequence that rang out sharp and wild through the roaring distortion. His left hand danced across the fretboard with machine-like precision, while his right hand shredded relentlessly. The younger crowd gawked, some shouting, "So cool!" Jake smirked, throwing in a sweep-picking run, his fingers gliding over the strings like a gust of wind, producing a smooth yet ferocious cascade of notes. "This is free music," he shouted over the speakers. "Way beyond that outdated conservative stuff." His friends went wild. A long-haired guy in the audience yelled, "Jake's the best," but some of the older folks just nodded, unimpressed. One muttered, "Fast, but nothing special." Then, a murmur rippled through the crowd. The back gate swung open. Karoline Leavitt, White House press secretary and the event's guest of honor, stepped in. She wore a neatly rolled-up white shirt, fitted jeans, and leather shoes dusted with road dirt. The crowd instantly recognized her, and cheers erupted. "It's Karoline." "Leavitt!" someone shouted. Phones shot up as kids waved and parents whispered, "She's here to support the kids." Karoline flashed a warm smile, nodded to the organizers, and made her way toward an instrument display featuring a black Fender Stratocaster, one of the fundraising auction items. As she approached, her fingers brushed the guitar's sleek body, testing the wood. One of the organizers grinned and handed her the instrument. "Give it a try, Karoline." She nodded, plugged into a small amp, and flipped the switch. A single warm, low note rang out, clean and deliberate. Some of the older onlookers nodded approvingly. Jake sneered, turning to his friends. "Check out this MAGA chick," he scoffed. "Bet she only talks big and can't actually play." His crew burst into laughter. "She's probably going to strum some conservative country just to flex on Twitter." Though his voice wasn't loud, it was enough for a few nearby folks to glance over. Karoline paused mid-strum, her gaze sliding to Jake. Unfazed, she offered a cool, confident smile, the kind she'd perfected while handling reporters in the briefing room. She made a minor adjustment to the tuning, then plucked another note, crisp and sharp. "She can actually play," someone murmured. Jake stepped closer to the stage's edge, pointing at her. "Hey, Leavitt, think you're better than me?" His voice boomed across the outdoor space, drowning out the soft rock from the corner speakers. The crowd hushed for a beat, then buzzed with excitement. Jake grinned. "I challenge you to a guitar duel, right here, in front of everyone." His eyes gleamed with competitive fire. "You up for it, press secretary?" His friends hollered. "Take her down, Jake!" The younger crowd roared in excitement, and phones shot up even higher, flashing like a miniature lightning storm. Karoline remained still, one hand resting lightly on the Fender's neck, eyes locked on Jake. She didn't rush to answer. Instead, she smiled faintly, sharp, assessing, as if sizing up an unworthy opponent. "A guitar duel?" she said, her voice low yet clear, slicing through the murmuring crowd. She took a step onto the stage, her leather shoes clicking softly against the wood. "Sure." The crowd exploded. "Karoline's in." An older woman leaned toward her friend. "That loudmouth kid is in way over his head." Her friend nodded knowingly. "Karoline doesn't mess around." Jake smirked, his eyes blazing with determination. "You're toast, Leavitt. You can't last a minute against me." He cranked his amp, the low buzz humming menacingly, mingling with the hum of Karoline's as she adjusted her volume knob. "She's done, Jake," one of his friends shouted. "Knock her out." Jake turned to the crowd, raising a fist. Who wants to see me crush this MAGA chick? A wave of cheers erupted from the younger audience while some adults crossed their arms, their curious eyes shifting to Karoline. A middle-aged man leaned toward his wife. He's cocky, he muttered, but Karoline's no rookie. His wife smirked. Just wait. Karoline didn't react. She simply slung the guitar strap over her shoulder, standing tall, fingers poised on the neck. You start, she said, her voice steady but challenging. Jake jutted his chin forward, growling, This is freedom versus conservatism, and I'm gonna win. His amp buzzed like a storm about to break. The amp roared as Jake maxed out the distortion, a deep, guttural rumble, like a race car revving, at the starting line. The crowd, kids, parents, seniors, huddled closer, eyes locked on him. Jake stood tall, legs apart, electric guitar slung across his chest, his fiery gaze sweeping the audience before landing on Karoline Leavitt. Watch. This Leavitt, he bellowed, his voice overpowering the soft rock trickling from the corner speakers. This is real music, you've got no shot. His friends erupted in cheers. Take her down, Jake. Smirking, he raised his hand, then attacked the strings like a tornado. From the first note, Jake exploded. A flurry of lightning-fast hammer-ons and pull-offs sliced through the air, mixing with the amp's raw distortion. His left hand blurred across the fretboard, a relentless machine, while his right hand alternate picked without mercy. The younger crowd gawked, some yelling, Jake's insane! He smirked, ramping it up, a two-handed tapping run, fingers hammering high on the frets, shrill siren-like notes piercing the air. The sound flooded the outdoor space, drowning out the rustling breeze. But he wasn't done. With a flick of his wrist, he shifted into sweep-picking, fingers brushing the strings like wind through tall grass, producing a smooth yet ferocious cascade of notes. His friends clapped wildly. Leavitt can't keep up, a long-haired guy shouted. Jake nodded to the beat, eyes scanning the crowd like he was headlining a stadium, not a community fundraiser. He threw in exaggerated expressions, grimacing, tilting his head, sticking out, his tongue like a true metal god. A young girl below filmed, jaw hanging open. He's nuts. Mid-solo, Jake shouted. Top that, MAGA! He shot a glance at Karoline, expecting her to flinch, but she just stood there, one hand resting lightly on the Fender's neck, watching him calm, unshaken. She nodded slightly, as if waiting for his theatrics to end. Jake smirked. She's toast. He pushed the speed even higher, fingers blurring, sweat rolling down his face. Another lightning-fast tapping run erupted, then, with a sharp yank of the whammy bar, his guitar screamed, a piercing wail like tires skidding on pavement. Some seniors winced, covering their ears. The reaction was mixed. Jake's friends whooped and hollered. She's done! A few kids bounced to the beat, eyes gleaming, but the adults just nodded politely. A middle-aged man murmured to his wife, fast but exhausting. She sighed. All flash, no depth. Jake didn't hear. He was lost in his own world, where speed was everything and he was unstoppable. With a final, ear-splitting string bend, he yanked the whammy bar again, letting the last note soar before releasing it into silence. The amp buzzed low. He stepped back, arms crossed tight, eyes triumphant. There! Jake shouted, his voice echoing across the space. That's freedom's music. Fast, strong, unbeatable. He turned to Karoline, daring her to quit. His friends laughed. Bet she's shaking. But she didn't budge. She just smiled. Cool, sharp. Then, with quiet confidence, she stepped forward, her leather shoes clicking against the stage. The sound alone was enough to hush the crowd. She reached for the amp, adjusting the volume. A low, steady buzz hummed from the black Fender. Stratocaster, real music, huh? She said, her voice low but clear, slicing through the murmuring audience. She tightened the strap over her shoulder, stood tall, fingers poised on the neck. The crowd held its breath. Phones shot up. Flashlights flickered like stars. Jake smirked, still smug, but a flicker of doubt crept in. No warm-up, no flash. Karoline struck the first note, A deep, powerful boom rolled from the amp, rich and alive like distant thunder. Some of the older folks instinctively nodded. Then she launched, not at Jake's frantic pace, but into a classic rock riff, sharp and brimming with energy. The opening of Sweet Child O' Mine. Her fingers glided over the fretboard, not a chaotic blur, but precise, deliberate, each note hitting the air with purpose. The guitar sang, not shrill, not overwhelming, but gripping, warm, alive. And she wasn't done. She flowed into a solo, clean, expressive bends, soaring emotional notes, each one deliberate. Her right hand picked with total control, effortless yet commanding. The sound wasn't loud. It spoke. It told a story. The crowd stirred. A young girl in the front gasped, eyes wide. "Karoline rocks," a middle-aged man muttered to his wife. "Now that's soulful playing." Phones shot up, flashes blazing across the outdoor space. Karoline pushed the solo to its peak, adding a rapid run, fast but never sloppy. Each note rang crisp and clear, precise as a well-delivered speech. She tilted her head slightly, focused, her right hand nudging the whammy bar just enough to deepen the power. The sound swept through the crowd, pulling everyone in. Kids bobbed their heads unconsciously. Parents tapped their feet. Nearby, an event organizer whispered to a colleague, "She's shutting him down." The colleague nodded. "Knew it. Karoline's no joke." Jake stood frozen, arms still crossed, but the smug grin was gone. He muttered, "Just luck," low enough that his friends couldn't hear, but deep down he felt it. Something in her playing unnerved him. It wasn't speed, it wasn't flash, it was confidence, absolute, unshakable, like she had nothing to prove. His crew grew quiet. The long-haired kid shrugged. "Hey, it's decent, but Jake's better." But his voice lacked conviction. His eyes darted away. Karoline ended on a long, low note, letting it hang in the air before muting the strings with her palm. The amp faded into a soft buzz. Then, thunderous applause. Cheers erupted. An older man shouted, "Karoline's amazing." A young girl turned to her friend, wide-eyed. She just smoked him. Phones kept rolling, flashes popping like fireworks. Karoline stood tall, hands relaxed on her guitar, eyes scanning the crowd before settling on Jake. "How's that, kid?" she asked, her voice even but sharp, throwing his own words back at him with a subtle jab. The crowd laughed. A few extra claps rang out, eyes turning to Jake with curiosity. His stomach twisted. He swallowed hard, hands clenching tighter, trying to hold his defiance. "Fine, you're decent," he shot back, raising his voice to drown out the applause. "But that was just a warm-up. I'll show you real domination." His friends rallied. "Yeah, Jake, crush her." But some adults shook their heads. An older woman whispered, "This kid's clueless." Karoline didn't respond, she just smiled faintly. Cool, confident. Then she stepped back, resting a hand on the neck of her guitar. "Your move." Jake gritted his teeth, eyes blazing. He couldn't lose. Not to Karoline Leavitt. Not with the crowd's growing doubt pressing in on him. He took a deep breath and flipped his amp back on. A low hum vibrated through the air. He shot Karoline a fiery glare. She just got lucky. Speed's everything, and he'd prove it. He slung his strap over his shoulder, stood tall, fingers trembling slightly with adrenaline. "This is real music," he roared, his voice booming across the outdoor space. The crowd quieted, eyes locked on this stage. Phones lifted, waiting for the next round. Karoline stood still, one hand light on the fender's neck, watching, calm, unshaken. Jake dove in. A flurry of lightning-fast notes exploded, hammer-ons and pull-offs swirling into a sonic storm faster than before. His amp's distortion roared, drowning out the soft rock still playing from the corner speakers. He clenched his jaw, fingers flying across the fretboard at a terrifying pace, sweat streaming down his face. "Watch this!" he yelled mid-solo, eyes flicking to the crowd, craving their cheers. He threw in another two-handed tapping run, fingers hammering the high frets. But this time, a note slipped, a tiny misstep, but enough to make some seniors frown. He didn't stop. With a sharp wrist snap, Jake pushed into sweep picking, fingers brushing the strings faster than ever, desperate to outdo himself. But the pressure was creeping in. A second note missed. Faint buzz cut through the flurry, breaking his momentum. His friends still clapped. "Sick, bro." But the older crowd had stopped nodding. A middle-aged man leaned toward his wife. "Fast but messy," she nodded. Way behind Karoline. Jake didn't hear, but he felt it. The vibe had shifted, and he wasn't the star anymore. His jaw tightened, sweat soaking his shirt. "I have to win," he thought, his eyes darting to Karoline. Her calm drove him insane. "You're outmatched," he bellowed, launching into an even denser solo, alternate picking mixed with tapping, fingers blurring across the fretboard. But the speed overpowered him. A third note went off key, then a bend too hard sent his guitar squealing like skidding tires. The crowd fell silent. Some seniors shook their heads. An older woman muttered, "He's just throwing notes around." Jake gritted his teeth, heart hammering. He tried to recover. He yanked the whammy bar, forcing the guitar to scream, but this time it didn't hit. This time it was just chaotic, disconnected noise. Jake pushed harder, sweat stinging his eyes, making him blink fast. Another sweep-picking run, but his fingers slipped. A shrill buzz cut through. His friends stopped cheering. The long-haired kid shrugged. "Hey, it's okay." But his voice trailed off, enthusiasm gone. Jake panted, eyes scanning the crowd for awe, finding only polite nods and blank stares. "There," he shouted, voice clinging to confidence. He yanked the whammy bar one last time, letting the note screech and fade. The amp growled a low buzz as he stepped back, hands shaking, eyes darting. The crowd clapped, sparingly. No cheers. No frenzy. A young girl whispered to her friend, "Fast, but all over the place." An older man shook his head. Karoline did way better. Jake heard it, and his chest tightened. For the first time, defeat crept in. He turned to Karoline, forcing nonchalance. "Well, Leavitt, think you can top that?" He yelled the words, but his voice wavered. His friend stayed quiet, eyes averted. Karoline spoke, low, clear, cutting through the murmurs. "Let me show you what music really is." She stepped forward, leather shoes clicking softly on the wood, hand tweaking the amp's volume. A low bass hum vibrated through the air, like a storm warning. The crowd held its breath. Phones rose higher, flashes popping everywhere, lighting up the space. No warm-up, no showboating. Karoline struck the first note, bold, deep, a thunderous rumble shaking the stage. The crowd froze. Some seniors nodded, eyes lighting up, sensing something big. Then, she launched in, not a slow solo, an explosive rock riff, raw, alive, channeling the fire of Back in Black. Her fingers moved over the fretboard, not Jake's frantic blur, but exact, decisive. Each note hit like a hammer to the chest. The guitar sang, not shrill, not wild, but warm, gripping, pulsing with energy. Jake stood still, hands gripping his guitar, eyes flickering. Karoline didn't pause. She flowed into a solo, bending strings with finesse, crafting soaring, soulful notes, her right hand picking, with total command. The sound wasn't just powerful, it told a story. Each note carried something real. Tense days at the podium, sleepless nights with her toddler, battles with the press. The crowd reacted. A young girl shouted, "Karoline's unreal!" Middle-aged man muttered to his wife, "That's from the heart." Phones filmed non-stop, flashes blazed. Karoline pushed higher, adding a flurry of quick notes, not to flaunt speed, but to underscore power. Each tone sharp, deliberate, like the words she'd once used to defend her stance. Then, she nudged the A whammy bar just enough, letting the guitar wail. Not overdone, just perfect. The sound flooded the outdoor space, sweeping everyone up. Some kids bounced, A few adults nodded unconsciously to the rhythm. An organizer whispered to a colleague. She just knocked him out. The colleague nodded. Karoline Leavitt's number one. Jake swallowed hard, hands trembling, eyes glued to Karoline. He wanted to argue, to shout that she was nothing, but the sound from her fender silenced him. She didn't just play, she conquered. No frantic speed, no empty flash, just pure talent and emotion. The crowd erupted, thunderous applause, cheers echoing everywhere. An older man yelled, "Karoline's the champ!" Karoline ended on a long, bold, low note, letting it hang in the air before gently muting the strings. The amp faded into a soft bass hum. The crowd exploded, clapping like thunder, whistles and shouts ringing out. "Karoline Leavitt's unreal," someone yelled. "She's a legend." A kid hopped excitedly below the stage. Jake stood frozen. Jaw dropped, hands limp by his guitar. What just happened? He thought, mind reeling. He'd been utterly outmatched. Want to keep going? Karoline's voice was even, but sharp. She stood tall, hands relaxed by the fender, eyes sliding over him with cool, effortless calm. The crowd laughed. Few extra claps chimed in, eyes locked on Jake with delight. He swallowed hard, hands shaking, searching for a comeback, but finding no words. His friends went dead silent. The long-haired kid muttered, she's good. Then turned away, like he couldn't face Jake anymore. Karoline said nothing more. She nodded slightly to the crowd, eyes still steady. Icy, a wordless statement. The applause roared again. Louder. Longer. A middle-aged man whispered to his wife, "She's not just a talker. She plays better, too." His wife laughed. "That kid's out of moves." Jake stood there, breathing hard, eyes blank. He had lost. Not just a guitar duel, he had completely lost to Karoline Leavitt, the conservative he'd once mocked. His mind spun, defeat crushing his chest like a weight he couldn't lift. The crowd kept cheering. Phones filmed non-stop. Flashes popped everywhere. An organizer shouted, "Karoline Leavitt, star of the night." Jake bowed his head, gripping his guitar tight at a loss for words, for actions, for anything. All he knew was this. He'd been dead wrong, and Karoline had just proven it, before hundreds of eyes. She stood tall, hands loose by the Fender Stratocaster, her icy gaze sweeping over the cheering crowd before settling on him. Then, she stepped closer. Her leather shoes clicked softly on the floor, snapping him out of his daze. The crowd quieted, waiting, curious. Her eyes held no arrogance, no mockery, just calm, like she was standing behind a podium facing the press. "You can hate my views," she said, voice low but clear, cutting through the lingering murmurs. "You can hate me for being a conservative." She paused. "But music doesn't need politics. It needs heart." Jake swallowed hard, clutching his guitar, eyes wavering, her words stabbed, not with venom but with truth. He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came, because he knew she was right. Speed, technique, flash, everything he'd prided himself on, felt hollow against her music. The crowd stayed, silent, eyes locked on them, waiting for his response. A middle-aged man whispered, "She didn't just win, she taught him a lesson." His wife nodded. "Hope the kid gets it?" Karoline tilted her head slightly, eyes still locked on Jake. "I don't play guitar to show off," she continued, voice steady but weighty. "I play to unwind from long days at the White House, to get through sleepless nights with my toddler, to find myself when the press hits from all sides." She studied him. "What do you play for?" Jake bowed his head, hands trembling, eyes fixed. On his guitar. He'd never thought about it. He played to prove, to flex, to claim he was freer than others. But now, before Karoline, he just felt small. "You've got talent," she said, her voice softer, almost encouraging. "But if you just chase speed, you'll never touch real music." Let your heart lead, not your pride. Jake looked up, met her gaze. For once, without defiance. Her words weren't a jab. They were advice, honest, direct, like how she tackled everything in her career. The crowd murmured, some nodded. She's right, a young girl whispered to her friend. Karoline's not just good, she knows how to teach. Jake took a deep breath, still gripping his guitar. He started to speak, his voice hoarse. Then he stopped, looked at his guitar, eyes pensive. Then he looked back at Karoline. Can I try again? His voice was quiet, genuine. For the first time, free of arrogance. The crowd buzzed, a few clapped lightly. He's turning around. Someone murmured. Karoline's lips curved into a small, warm smile. Her first in this duel. Play, she said, nodding slightly. But this time, let your heart lead. Jake bowed his head, hands still trembling. He lifted his guitar, flipped on the amp. A low bass hum vibrated through the speakers, but this time, he didn't crank the distortion. Stood still for a moment, took a deep breath. Then, he plucked the first note. Slow, warm, unhurried, his fingers glided over the neck, not wild shredding, not speed, just a simple, flowing sequence, like he was searching for something. He bent a string, gently letting the sound breathe, focusing on feeling, not flash, for the first time, not perfect, not complex, but real, for the first time. He played from the heart, the crowd stayed quiet. Then, a few clapped softly, not the frenzy from before, but warm, encouraging. An older man nodded. He's learning, woman whispered. Karoline changed him. Jake stopped, looked up at her, his gaze no longer doubtful, but respectful. Karoline nodded, satisfied, her icy stare, now softer. Better, she said, voice low. But you've got more to learn. She turned, nodded to the crowd. Applause rose again, trailing her steps as she left the stage. Jake stood there, hand on the guitar neck, eyes pensive, watching her go. He didn't win, but something had shifted. Not defeat, but a new start. The crowd still clapped, but now, for the first time, he felt no pressure, just a question echoing in his mind. What do I play for? Karoline had given him the answer. For the first time, Jake wanted to explore the answer. He bowed his head, fingers brushing the strings, plucking a simple, low note. It rang out, slow, unhurried, so unlike the frantic shredding he'd once prized. His friends slipped away quietly, no more cheers or jabs. A few in the crowd lingered, watching with curious, supportive eyes. An older man nodded. He's starting to get it. Jake said nothing, just stood there, hand on his guitar, not gripping it in defeat but holding it in curiosity. As Karoline Leavitt left the stage, the fundraiser audience posted clips to Twitter and TikTok. Karoline KO's arrogant kid, one tweet. Reed paired with a video of her peak solo. On TikTok, a side-by-side clip of Jake's messy playing next to Karoline's flawless performance went viral. The caption? When you challenge the wrong person. Jake sat in a corner scrolling. The comments. Hit fast, he's too full of himself. Karoline's a legend. Public pressure crashed down on him. But through it all, Karoline's words lingered, grounding him, guiding him. The next day, the guitar duel exploded beyond New Hampshire. It went nationwide. Millions of views in hours. Headlines everywhere. Press. Secretary Karoline Leavitt School's cocky guitarist. The hashtag Karoline vs Jake shot to Twitter's top trends. Thousands of comments. That kid's ego got wrecked. Deserved it. Karoline's Back in Black was fire. The media jumped in, from Fox News to CNN. Karoline Leavitt proves talent beyond politics. Jake sat on the edge of his bed, headphones on, electric guitar resting in his lap. No more lightning-fast metal solos. No more trying to prove something. This time, he listened. Stairway to Heaven. Karoline had suggested it before she left. The gentle, opening notes flowed through his headphones. Jimmy Page's delicate arpeggios filled the room. Jake closed his eyes, fingers moving slowly over the neck, mimicking the soft, soulful bends. He paused, tried again, then smiled. Not smug, not victorious. Smile of discovery. He pulled off the headphones, set them on the bed, stared at his guitar. She's right. His voice was quiet but firm. It's not speed, it's heart. He plucked a simple sequence, letting the sound breathe. No rush, no need to show off. For the first time, he played to feel, to understand himself. He thought back to Karoline's question. What do you play for? Before, he played to prove he was better, to mock, to claim his freedom over her conservatism. But now, he saw it. Music wasn't a fight. It was a way to connect with others, with himself. Jake stood, walked to the window, gazed at the starry night. He thought of Karoline, not as the MAGA chick he'd mocked, but as someone who had opened a door he never knew existed. She didn't just beat him on stage. She made him rethink himself. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, then turned back and picked up his guitar. This time, he played a short piece. Slow, gentle, flowing notes, like an unspoken thank you. Not perfect, but real. For the first time, he felt truly connected to the music. He set the guitar down, smiling, not for victory, but for finding something worth chasing. The final note lingered in the quiet room, like a promise to himself. He'd learned to play from the heart, like Karoline did, and this time, he'd do it right. The bigger picture. This story, a liberal guitarist challenging Karoline Leavitt to a duel, only to be humbled by her talent, mirrors the deep ideological and generational divides in today's America. Jake, with his Resist t-shirt and belief that free music trumps old-school conservatism, represents a confident, sometimes arrogant slice of American youth. Karoline, White House press secretary, wasn't just another political figure to him. She was an ideological opponent. But the guitar duel wasn't just about skill. It was a symbolic battle. Freedom versus conservatism. A familiar clash in politics, social media, and daily life. Jake's crushing loss, from his chaotic solo to his stunned silence at Karoline's soulful performance, shows how bias can blind us to real talent. But Karoline? She didn't fire back with ego, she responded with skill and wisdom. Music doesn't need politics. It needs heart. That line, paired with Jake slowing down to play Stairway to Heaven at home, drives home the lesson. Ditch the labels. Find true value. In a world where liberal versus conservative tags fuel endless fights, this story offers something different. Listen, learn from your rival. Like Jake did. Because in a divided society, clashes don't have to end in destruction. They can be chances to understand each other. Thanks for joining Jake and Karoline on their journey to finding music's heart. Subscribe to catch more stories about breaking past bias, just like this.